Let's Talk Shit is a series of videos designed to antagonize the entirety of the gaming community for some of the more, how do I put this nicely, retarded philosophies, ideologies, and I guess mentalities, because some of this garbage is so stupid and petty that it wouldn't fit under the former, that people so frequently champion, and they more often than not harm themselves with it. Now, these generally form into categories of people who are smunts, those that try and are either not smart enough or not capable of conducting themselves in a professional manner, and those that don't care. Those that don't care are pretty straightforward. The smunts are egotistical tools who think they can do no wrong, and that creates more problems than can be discussed in a reasonable amount of time. And those that are not smart enough tend to simply pass off misinformation without regarding the harm in it. All of this creates bigotry and misinformation, even if that is not the intention, and continues to harm the gaming industry as a whole. So yes, before you can comment about it, I'm essentially just being Jim Sterling, with the only difference being I'm not going to pull any punches for the sake of professionalism, because fuck that. And I'm going to focus on the journalists and pundits around me, because no matter how evil and malicious a company may want to be, if we never purchase DLC, they will never make it or sell it. If we never buy a microtransaction in a $60 game, they will not put them in there. Corporations are massive bitches, and if we weren't retarded, then they would be begging us for money rather than playing us against each other because of the brand loyalty that nearly every gamer has. Fuck all of you for that. And before you claim I'm pandering, to whom? By the time I'm halfway through this series, I expect to be on everyone's shit list because of what I'm asking you to do is stop fucking around and being an idiot, and yes, that means everyone. And no one likes being called an idiot. So today's venture into pissing everyone off will be a very minor point. One, because why waste all the hate and vitriol I have right out of the gate with my best topics when no one is watching? And two, not all of these problems are as massive nor even bad enough for me not to like the person being talked about. Now, I like Haedox, but at the end of the day, he is a mixture of all three categories above, and that leads to misinformation, and we can't have that. The video we're going to talk about is his discussion of some unmentioned fanboy claiming that Paper Mario 1000 Year Door is perfect, and how he does not do a good job refuting that claim. To start this off, he says this.
When I was younger, I did the Pit of 100 trials, and all I got was a fucking healing item.
Oh, so Return Posted healed you. I didn't know it did that. So the point of this video is ultimately to show how opinions are different, and these differences mean everything. People like to cite opinions are opinions and that they can be different, which is true, but certain opinions are better than others, and this is due to how diligent the person is, and how often misinformation informs these opinions. My ultimate point being that despite what people might say, my opinion is objectively better than Haedox's, not just because he's too lazy to fact check something that easy, but because of all the other shit we're going to talk about in the rest of this video. And I do wish this was caused by snobbery, but that's just not the case. So the point of his video is that he claims 1000 Year Door does indeed have flaws, and he proceeds to attempt to demonstrate 3 points towards this end. First is that the combat is broken. Second is that Rogue Port isn't very good, and third being that Chapter 4 was confusing, or as he attempted to put it into his videos, that the game is too monotonous in how it was structured, which he only addresses once in his video as saying that the missions are filler without giving any real thought into that. First up, let's go with the broken combat system. His main point is that he only uses Vivian, and therefore the combat and partner system is bad. This is pretty stupid for many reasons. Let's just say that this idea is indeed true, and Vivian is the best partner. That does not make the combat in the game broken, just not very well balanced. So good work on knowing them definitions, buddy. Or this could be the case of intellectual dishonesty, but fuck it, we have more dumb to go through. But I can't even give him that because she is not the best partner unless you count the fact that she is the jack of all trades character. The problem with saying that she's the best because she has utility is that she doesn't do a single thing better than any other partner, and that makes her far less valuable to a player that knows what they are doing. Yes, I am insinuating that Haedox doesn't know how to play the game. He gives many reasons as to why Vivian is better than other partners, but this is countered by things that are in the game. If you use the quick change badge, then her utility is meaningless because you have every partner you could ever possibly want for each fight and each and every turn. Her ability to protect Mario from attacks is pointless if you know how to counter, which not only prevents damage but also causes damage against the attacker. And her burn effect isn't really all that good unless you're in an extended fight, but if it's just a regular fight, the 2 or 3 points of damage are not going to speed anything up as you would have covered that damage anyways in the turn that you didn't save. His next point is that Rogueport is a bad hub world, and I have no clue how to respond to that. He kind of meanders around the topic and doesn't get into specifics, so I really don't have anything to establish an argument in which to counter. He does present the idea that things ought to have changed over time, but that doesn't mean that introducing that idea would have been executed well. Nor is that even an argument as to why Rogueport is bad, and that just comes off confusing. He calls Rogueport tedious and you having to go back there being dumb, but he doesn't clarify this at all, so it's just a meaningless statement that does nothing to further the discussion. He does attempt to bring up the return postage thing as a reason as why Rogueport is bad, but again, that is factually incorrect. His next point is a collection of multiple points such as the word backtracking used a few times too many, Chapter 4 being bad, and other nonsense. He makes a point about there being backtracking in this level, which isn't wrong, but it also isn't that bad, and is only made worse by the rest of the game being that much better. He then talks about cryptic puzzles as we watch him on-screen fumble with an extremely easy puzzle that you had to solve other times in previous levels. Meaning he is legitimately dumb, or he is lying and attempting to push his narrative with deliberate gameplay footage. Either way, it's not that great. He then makes a point about how it wasn't clear that you needed to spy on the birds in that chapter, which is almost true. But his favorite companion of all time does have a conversation just after she joins you that does tell you pretty directly that you should use her powers to listen to the birds. Oh, hey, I sort of have an idea. Birds pretend to be innocent with people around, but they're actually really well informed from all that flying and eavesdropping. With my power, you can listen in on their conversations without them knowing. So, in addition to the villagers, let's try to get some info from the local birds. That's the least I could do for you with my powers. Oh, I guess calling you fucking stupid would be redundant, wouldn't it? He then says fighting in the mist is annoying, but that only adds to an argument in an earlier point, as Vivian can't clear the mist, and you would know that if you experimented instead of pretending to have found what was the meta and then stuck with it despite everything telling you otherwise. My favorite of his points were in the section where he just didn't understand what General White's quest was actually for. It was to force the player back into the places that they had already been, and hopefully remind the player that there were many collectibles throughout the game that they couldn't get but that are now obtainable. Yes, if all you're doing is going from one place to another, it would be painfully boring. But if you collect the shit you missed earlier, rather than bitch about a thing you don't understand, you'd get a power boost that could be very helpful for the endgame. The last point he makes in the video worth commenting on, outside of this weird pandering he does at the end, is this out of nowhere making fun of the dude he was not willing to name, and it just comes off as condescending towards the viewer, as I just proved that you are dumber than myself, so it makes me question reality more than it does anything else. He goes on this little jaunt about how Thousand Year Door was not the first Paper Mario, either making fun of someone or presenting an aggressive strawman argument to any variety of arguments that is attempting to devalue the Thousand Year Door, but being far too stupid to do anything other than make him look stupid. Funny thing is that this is him making the claim that it's not as good as everyone says it is, to justify his counter-argument to the notion that everything after Thousand Year Door was a disappointment. His problem comes from the fact that the first game he played in the series, at the very least consciously played, was Super Paper Mario, and because of this, he feels the need to defend this as the best one because nostalgia has colored his opinion on the game to the point where he can no longer speak about it with any authority. Attempting to devalue the Thousand Year Door by saying it wasn't the first one is retarded because that's the reason why Thousand Year Door was so good and Super Paper Mario was so bad. One perfected an already strong title, the other one threw out all the progress away and did something completely new, and it suffered because of it. Now, I'm not saying that Super Paper Mario is a bad game, but it is shit in comparison to the first two, and the reason everyone is mad at the series is because each and every game that doesn't revert back to the old formula is an insult to the original fans. And no matter what people might say, the fact that they make the Mario and Luigi games to be very similar in design to the Paper Mario series, and yet spend all their time fucking with the series that made that popular is a legitimate reason to be upset. Why not experiment with a new IP rather than using the new IP to stick to the old formula and fuck around with the old IP? Oh, and instead of being super pedantic, you could just not be such an asshole and not fuck up, as Paper Mario 64 was not the first in line, as Super Mario RPG was the first, and did the same things with only the layout being slightly different. The problem with your argument against the mindset that the Thousand Year Door is the best ever is the game actually is the best ever, and is a very strong contender for one of the best games ever made. Those are the games that need to be weighed against, because otherwise we are not aiming to make better games than the best. And again, I get what you're attempting to say, but doing it in an underhanded manner doesn't help you. Now, you are right, as the Paper Mario Thousand Year Door is not flawless, but the fact that between two people writing the script, neither of them could come up with a single reason as to why the game wasn't bad, that wasn't complete shit, and being too damn lazy to do a second draft of the damn thing is one of the saddest things I've ever seen. Contrary to popular belief, reviewers are not people that are telling you what they thought of a thing because anyone could just say a thing or go with a gut feeling. A reviewer should at the very least attempt to understand why they have that opinion before mindlessly expressing it to other people. Otherwise, we are only being weeaboos screaming at each other about how Kagome is our waifu and not actually analyzing anything and therefore not actually reviewing it. Again, nothing personal to Haedox, as I still like his content and I am subscribed, but this kind of thing does embarrass me as a reviewer and as a human. Once more, this series is not to get me fans or adoration, but quite the opposite. It's meant to shame you into not being such an idiot and mindlessly going through life without thinking. And if you are ruining the video gaming world for me, your ass will be on the chopping block next.
Rougeport, 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 Rougeport.